That's right. There are a lot of everybody's here. Thank you so, so much for being here. We so appreciate it. I know a lot of folks come every single month, and that means the world to us because, you know, you could be doing something else, but you're not. You're here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for coming to the Story Salon. My name is Beverly Mickens. I'm the host and founder of the Story Salon. And a little extra thing here that I'm very excited to tell you about. We hopefully, although we love the Zoom, who doesn't love the Zoom? We embrace the Zoom thing to our bosoms, deep into our bosoms. And yet, we would still like to actually see each other and be together as we were before. And we're hoping that can happen on Wednesday, September the 8th. We're doing a lot of stuff to make that possible. We're cleaning up the art parlor. We're buying the things that we should to keep everyone safe. We are maintaining the very highest levels of hygiene. And again, there's no but, and we will comply with the city of Los Angeles and what they say we need to do as we find out what happens with the virus. So we are hoping to open up again on September the 8th. And if we're pushed back a couple of weeks, so be it, but hopefully not that long. So this will be happening in the future. And I do want to ask people just to hold a good thought for us being able to get together and open up again. Just hold that good thought and let it brew. But in the meantime, you know, thank God for Zoom. We can see each other and tell our stories and still feel wildly creative. And it's nice because we're here and we don't have to do anything. You know, it's you can wear your sweatpants if you want to. You don't have to have underwear. We prefer you do, but you know, not for me to say. You can just be here and listen to these great stories. And tonight is a superb night of just like really top-notch storytelling. Tonight we have a theme, and our theme is My Walk on the Wild Side. And the Color Girls, which I guess would be me, saying do, 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 and probably a lot of other things. But that is our theme tonight, My Walk on the Wild Side. And because these storytellers are all so terrific and superb, they will have you thinking of your own story of your wild side that you'll go, oh, hey, you know, I could tell that story about that time and the thing with the mafia and the dead body, but as it turns out, he really wasn't dead. That can be your story. So think about that. And before we go any further, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Miss Amber Greenberg. Hooray, yes. Who's the coolest chick in town, if you need to know that. She helps us, she goes to more than any length to help us promote this show and bring it into the hearts and the living rooms of everybody. Without her, I shudder to think where we'd be. So tremendous gratitude to Amber Greenberg. And you know what, that's enough of my lip flapping. I think we should start the salon so you can hear everybody's stories of their walk on the wild side. And we're going to start with a woman who, if you go to Amazon, if you call her directly, if you go to her house, you can get her books. She has several books, Confessions of a Prom Queen. She has several books out. She's done several one-person shows at the salon. There's so much you can say about Lila, but I want her to be on every show that we do. I find her tremendously remarkable. That's the kind of storyteller she is. Miss Lila Silvern.
Hi. Well, I actually premiering, this is the first time for my new book, which I hope will soon be available on Amazon, but it's Chalkboard Confidential. And I thought that tonight's stories were supposed to be a week on the wild side instead of a walk on the wild side. But so that was kind of my theme. And the title for this, and it's been a lot of problems getting it self-published, but here goes. And it's a serious story. No problema. During my time at CSUN getting a master's degree in education, I became a militant supporter of bilingual education, and I would get into heated arguments about my convictions. I went to TESOL and CABE conferences to gather research to support my beliefs. At one of these teacher conferences, a very charming young man who introduced himself as Dr. Raul Montoya approached me with a dazzling smile and a flyer advertising a teacher exchange that would take place that summer in Ensenada. The plan was that LA teachers would spend a week in Baja, staying in the homes of local profesores. We would get Spanish language instruction and visit schools. The cost would be a small donation to a local orphanage. In the future, the teachers in Ensenada would come to Los Angeles and they would stay in our homes. It sounded terrific. And it was always easy for an attractive young Mexican professor to excite my passions for education, travel, and cultural exchanges at all levels. My best friend, Charlotte, who liked to be called Carlotta in those days and was as crazy as I was the first to sign up and add one teacher from her school. Two teachers from my school were also eager to join us. Carlotta and I would serve as chaperones and organizers. At our first meeting with El Profesor, he said he was affiliated with a very prestigious local university. Carlotta and I began to have a few trepidations, which we urged each other to ignore when we didn't find out the name of the university. Well, what time will we be leaving? Carlotta asked. Oh, sometime in the morning, Raul answered. Do we need train reservations? I wanted to know. No problema, he answered. Everything will be taken care of. How will we get from San Diego to Ensenada? No problema. My cousin who lives in Chula Vista will drive us. All of us, I asked. No problema. He has a big van. The plan, as best we could figure, was that we would all meet at my house on a Sunday at 6 a.m. in the morning. One of Raul's friends would drive us down to the Union Station where we would board the Amtrak train into San Diego. The little group of naive, unsophisticated, and completely trusting teachers arrived at my house promptly at 7 in the morning. Raul arrived at 7:45 with his friend who was barely awake. Carlotta and I expressed our worries to Raul about him being late and not calling. There were no cell phones then. No problema, he chided, making us feel like priggish gringa school teachers. When we arrived at Union Station, we learned that the next train to San Diego would be leaving at 1 p.m. Raul laughed it off. No problema. We could begin our acculturation on Olvera Street across the street, spending a few hours there. Carlotta and I could not hide our anger, frustration, and apprehension when Raul took charge of storing the luggage on the train. We both decided to keep our cases next to us, which was the start of a growing suspicion and iciness between us and a bonding with Raul and the three young unmarried teachers. When we arrived in San Diego, Raul's cousin was there to meet us in his van and take us to his house for dinner before our journey to Ensenada. Won't we be arriving very late for hosts to pick us up? I wondered. No problema, Raul answered with a note of impatience in his voice. Carlotta and I looked at each other with a mounting dread in our eyes. After a few margaritas, a splash in the pool, and a Mexican dinner sent over from a nearby restaurant, Raul and his cousin had completely conquered the hearts of the young teachers. Carlotta and I, after discussion in the bathroom, realized we'd have to go through with this. We couldn't abandon our girls. We arrived in Ensenada about midnight. We were at a tastefully furnished home where a couple had invited two of the teachers to stay with their family. We were relieved to see the other teacher escorted to a neighbor's house. Carlotta went off with another family to another neighborhood and I waited to be picked up by Umberto Castellano, a teacher at a technical school. Raul told me I was chosen to stay with Umberto, who Raul said looked like the Hollywood star Gilbert Roland when he was younger. Umberto lived with his sister, who would be away for the week. It was beginning to smell fishy. Umberto arrived. He did not look like Gilbert Roland. He had very strong body odor, and his apartment was far from where the other teachers were staying. On the ride over, he spoke entre dientes, mumbling. I was suffering from exhaustion, a hangover, PMS, indigestion, and fear, but realized I kept nodding my head and smiling in agreement to whatever he was suggesting. Oh, thank God I hadn't agreed to share a bed with him. His sister's room had a mattress that felt like it was stuffed with straw. He told me he had only hot water for showering every other day. He was a kind fellow who did teach at a local trade school, which he pointed out as he drove me to meet the others in the mayor's office the next morning. I was relieved to see that Carla was there. The other three teachers were happily ensconced with wonderful families and nice houses. Carlotta and I had no way of staying in touch with each other. We didn't have cell phones then. The first event on the agenda was a visit to meet the mayor. We arrived just as a group of very handsome American race car drivers were leaving. We exchanged smiles and greetings. 2 hours later, when our girls went to their lovely homes to have lunch with their families, Carlotta and I were left in a restaurant commiserating about the houses we were assigned to and not trusting Raul. Just then, the race car drivers we had recently flirted with and their local host and guide entered the restaurant and saw us looking worried and unhappy. When I told the Ensenada official about our leader and the mess we were in, he assured us he would check out to find out if the money we had donated to a local orphanage was actually received and whether Raul's credentials were in order, which we later found out they were not. When Raul learned he was being investigated, he became very angry, and he accused me of destroying relations between the US and Mexico. I was sure he planned a day trip on a bumpy road into the lonely desert just so I could be thrown out of the Jeep on a sharp turn. I held on tight to Carlotta and my seat. When that didn't work, he took us on a sightseeing excursion to the Bufadora, where he could push me over the cliff and into the ocean. I stayed in the Jeep and bought a postcard to see what I missed. At Husong's Cantina, Umberto had me squeezed in next to him in a booth, thighs touching and his arm across my shoulder, pulling me in closer. He insisted on buying me a drink. After I refused to drink the cerveza Raul handed me with an evil sneer. It wasn't what everyone else was drinking. I said I wasn't thirsty. I knew I had to take matters into my own hands and get out of Ensenada without offending Umberto. I could tell he was growing more attracted to me by the way he looked at me and by the heavy cologne he sprayed on his body and in the car. I thought I needed to discourage any physical advances the only way I thought might work. In my limited Spanish, I explained, "Soy una mujer muy honorable. I am a woman of honor and do not want to tarnish my reputation by staying alone in the home of so dashing an unmarried man." He fell for it. It actually turned him on even more, and he agreed to drive poor Carlotta, who was suffering from turista, and me across the border to San Diego, where we could take the train back to LA. When we told our young teachers that we had to return to Los Angeles early for personal reasons, they were thrilled to be left with Carlos and each other and the very gracious families that were treating them like family members. Raul agreed to drive us only if he could visit me in Los Angeles. What I wanted to say was, of course, when I get over my ovarian disease and I divorce my newly invented husband, Instead, I nodded weakly and, not wanting to appear racist, said, "No problema. Thank you."
Lila Silvern. Oh gosh.
No
Thank you,
problema.
Lila. No problema. Oh my God, that was a wild side.
Oh,
That was a
yeah.
perfect Lifetime
Third
movie.
world.
An orphanage, a dashing man with no credentials. His brother-in-law, his friend who was a little overweight and interested in you, and the possibility of being kidnapped. That is a great Lifetime movie. I would watch that. If you were starring in it, I would watch that. Thank you, Lila.
Soy una mujer muy honorable, yes.
See, and I don't know enough Spanish. I'm horrified. I'm bad at that. I would have to say, no entrada la empanada. Sorry, no idea. Or I would say, el tiburón es muy peligroso, which means the shark is very dangerous. So I don't think any of those would work. Thank you, Lila.
Thank you,
I'm
Deborah.
bringing up someone new, but not really new, because I've already invited her to a show whenever we open up, or she could do a Zoom show here too. That would be swell. But Miyo's been doing so many other shows, storytelling shows all across town, that she is beyond swell. And I think she is dynamite and out of sight. And I'm very happy that she is here. Let me make sure I don't mess this up. Miyo Yamauchi. Please welcome her.
Do you hear me now?
Hey.
Okay, good. On my birthday, I received a ticket in the mail. It wasn't a ticket for Beyonce's concert or a trip to Paris. It was a "It's Not Me" red light camera ticket. You may remember, but back in 2011, LA Times revealed that those red light camera tickets have nothing to do with DMV. And the fines were just voluntary. A little after that, the camera program was terminated. Then, how did I get the ticket? Beverly Hills was one of the cities that didn't remove the program. The system was still the same at the time, so the fines were voluntary as long as you ignore them completely. Did I ignore it? Absolutely not. Because I love Judge Judy. I love People's Court. For me, it was a ticket for the red carpet to the courtroom without committing a crime. Before I went, I researched and found a website called Highway Robbery. It explained what to do step by step, along with some true stories. According to the website, officers may intimidate, mislead, or trick you. But you don't have to finger the drivers if you don't want to. I was ready. I was confident. I practiced my line. Your Honor, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. With the only line, I went to the Beverly Hills courthouse. After the security check, I followed some people that led to some windows. A woman at the window asked me, "What would you like to do today?" Huh? That question wasn't on the website. I'm not ready. I would like to fight. Do you want to fight? Maybe. She looked at my ticket. Miss, you don't want to fight. This is not you. You just need an arraignment. The judge will dismiss you. Oh, okay. I don't want to fight. Who wants to fight? Can I see the judge now? Not today. So it wasn't my day. But a few months later, the day had finally come. I was ready. I was confident. I practiced my line. Your Honor, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. With the only line, I went to the Beverly Hills courthouse once again. After the security check, I was sent upstairs this time. About 70 people showed up for their arraignment. In the beginning, we need to watch a video about traffic tickets. It was boring. There was no humor. There was no vocal variety. There was no story. They lost me after a few minutes. While we were watching it, the judge walked in. As soon as I saw her, I was thrilled. It was Judge Rebel. Do you know who she is? If you don't, you need to watch TMZ more. She's the one who sentenced Lindsay Lohan to 90 days in jail. She's the one whom Lindsay used the B word to. This is the best day in my life. After the video, Judge Rebel started off saying, "Good morning, everybody. I saw some of you dozing off during the video. You should buy the DVD so that you can sleep better at night." Then she changed her tone. "I need to warn you first." Everybody felt the tense. "Please do not use a cell phone in my courtroom. If I see anybody using a cell phone, I will chop off your head with this." And she grabbed a giant gavel under the table. It was 100 times bigger than the regular gavel. She even has a prop. Oh, Judge Judy. Then she called "It's Not Me" red light ticket holders. 4 of us handed our photos and tickets. First, she told us do's and don'ts. Don't talk too much. I may ask you who the driver was, but I don't want to know. So just tell me you don't, unless you hate them. Just tell them to drive more carefully next time. That's all I'm asking. Then she saw my ticket and photo ID. "Miss Yamauchi, you did such a great job. You don't look anything like him. Do you know who the driver was?" "No, I don't." "Where do you keep your car key?" "At home." "Well, you'd better be careful where you keep your car key, because sometimes people break into your house, take your car key, drive your car, come back to your house, and put the key where they found it. It happens a lot. If you loan your car to somebody you don't know, please leave your phone number with us. I'm sure people in the courtroom would love to borrow your car. You are dismissed." Now, you may be wondering who the driver was. Well, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. Judge Beverly.
Oh my gosh, Miyo, thank you so much. I loved you doing that story. Thank you. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I still wanted you to say, but I have to exercise my right to, okay, forget it. I'll just go, forget it. And I like the idea of of having to watch a video about traffic tickets, which, trust me, will eventually be a series on Netflix. I just have a feeling about that, but thank you so much. Please continue to come back as often as you wish. That Miyo Yamauchi, thank you, hooray. With a criminal past. I like women like that. That is her walk on the wild side. I'm going to introduce someone who we've not seen here in several months. Why the hell not? I don't know. Because I adore Vicki and I bow to her completely. She is a tease. She is a taunt, always enticing, and always makes me and us want more of her. Always. Miss Vicki Juditz.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This story I told a year ago. This is the 1-year anniversary of this particular pandemic story. So in the story, it is Monday, August 17, 2020.
Gosh.
And I have not left my house for several days. It's not just the virus. It's over 100 degrees in Burbank. And according to Weather Underground, the air is very unhealthy, all caps. Now, of course, I've been in my house mostly for the past 5 months. I guess that's not such a big deal, but with the air so bad, I mean, I can't even walk around the block. I can't see another living soul. I live alone. My husband died years ago. My kids away at college. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Now, if you remember at this time, our president then decided to destroy the post office. Now, yes, I was very concerned about voting, but in a selfish way. I had another concern. See, I was a person at the time who paid my bills by mail. Yes, I was the person who, clipped out the little coupon and wrote something called a check. Do you remember that? I wrote a check, right? And I put the check and the paper in an envelope. Yes, and then I put a stamp on the envelope and I drove this thing to a little blue box called a mailbox. Well, I would have to leave that old way of life behind. I had to set up, these accounts for like my gas bill and whatnot. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking up my first username. Are you fucking kidding me? 1, 2, 3, question mark, question mark, question mark. And my first password, up yours 45, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. By 2 a.m., I'm done. I'm up. Yeah, I'm not going to be sleeping now. So I'm going to bake. Remember when we did that? Everybody was baking. Remember, you'd go to the store and they might be sold out of flour, or they'd be rationing it and you'd only get a little teeny tiny bag of flour. Now, I barely cook, but I was baking. Yes, so I go online to get a recipe. Now, I really don't cook, so it's got to be something with 6 ingredients or less. And yeah, okay, I find something. Flour, check. Sugar, check. Butter, check. Fresh rosemary.
Okay, wait a second.
Yes. So
No,
I
honey, I
go
just.
to my patio door. The rosemary bush is right outside. And then I see dark shapes creeping around outside. I turn on the patio light. A mother raccoon and 3 children are romping around the edge of my pool, and they're sticking their paws in the water and they're splashing. They're ecstatic. I'm so jealous. I can barely swim. I haven't been in the pool since my kid was small because I said, my husband passed away, my kid's away. I'm not going to get in that pool, with nobody else here because, well, I could die. So I'm like so jealous. They're having such a great time. And I'm thinking these animals do not have to worry about the virus. They don't have to worry about Trump. They don't have to worry about the post office. They don't have to sit through the Democratic National Convention thinking, how did we get to the place where Joe Biden was the only person on the face of the earth who could save us from everything? A dog barks and the family takes off. I go outside and I harvest that rosemary. And then I get out a big knife, a really sharp knife, so satisfying. And I hack that butter to bits, and I hack that rosemary to bits, and I put everything together as a batter, and I put the batter into these muffin cups. It's only going to take 20 minutes, it says, for rosemary shortbread to bake in the oven. So 20 minutes, I set the timer, bing, oh yes, it's done. So I go over to the oven, I turn it off, and I take out that muffin tray, and out of the corner of my eye, I see something moving outside beyond the kitchen window. That patio light is still on. It's the mother raccoon. And she's standing on her hind legs and she's looking at me with those curious black eyes and that black mask. Her fur, it looks as if it's been brushed. She's standing there swaying back and forth just a little bit, and she's speaking. She's chittering at me. I'm saying, what are you saying? And then she's laughing. She's chittering so loud. And I realized, oh my God, she wants the shortbread. Of course, she smelled it. And so I take a big spoon and I scoop out one of those muffins. And I go to the patio door and I open just a crack. And I throw the muffin out there. And this animal, I swear to God, makes a noise like a tea kettle. She is an Amazonian wildlife warrior. And she takes off with the muffin. Then I sit and I have a muffin and a little coffee, and I wait for the family to come back, but they don't. And then on another day I wait, another night I wait, and I don't see them again, and I'm really missing them. And so I decided I'm going to rent a movie. There's a Disney movie from 1969. It's called Rascal, and it stars Billy Mooney. And Billy Mooney finds an orphan raccoon. This orphan raccoon he takes home. He names him Rascal, and Rascal rides around on Billy Mooney's head. And in Billy Mooney's bike basket, this animal jumps up on Billy Mooney's bed and curls up like a cat. But finally, of course, it's time for Rascal to return to the wild. And so Billy Mooney puts Rascal in a canoe and takes him out into the wilderness. And I look on Wikipedia, and there really was a Rascal, and he lived in a house in Egerton, Wisconsin. And you can go there. There's a museum, and they have Rascal's high chair. And I so want to go there, but of course I can't, because I can't leave my house. I see at that moment outside, the mother raccoon has returned alone. She's now a single mom like me. I guess the children have just so quickly grown up and gone their way. And she creeps around the edge of the pool. She's gone. And then another night I wait to see her, and another night and I don't. And so I order a little raccoon online. And the little raccoon sits right next to this little figurine of me that I got at a tourist trap in Manhattan. And in the night, when I can't sleep, 2 a.m., I sit and I wait.
Vicki Juditz. Thank you so much, Vicki. Oh my, can't believe it's been a year. Oh my God. Thank you for reminding us. And I'm sorry, my computer's old. I got bumped off, but I returned. I returned just for the end of the possum story. And that's all you need to know, really. Thank you. We shall continue this with a woman. I've done shows with her. I've watched her show. She's done stories at the salon. She's done whole shows of her own at the salon. I find her just tremendously talented, endearing, and irresistible. That is Suzanne Weerts.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So my roommate and I were packing for spring break in Daytona Beach when Abby's parents called. Listen, her dad said, Fred has to have surgery on Monday, and we've already got plane tickets and rooms lined up for a trip to the British Virgin Islands. Would you two like to join us? What this meant was we would have to head north to Virginia from Chapel Hill that evening instead of south to Florida the following morning. Instead of driving in a caravan of 20 teens listening to mixed cassettes bootlegged off Casey Kasem's Top 40 en route to a Quality Inn along Atlantic Avenue and sleeping 6 to a room, subsisting on cheap beer and happy hour taquitos, instead, we'd be flying to an island in the Caribbean. We'd jam to reggae music, stay at a luxury resort, and drink rum punch while eating plantains and pastelas in restaurants with ocean views. Abby and I talked about letting our friends down. They were counting on our gas money and contributions to the kegs. We discussed how much we'd miss the biker gangs revving their engines on International Speedway Boulevard just outside our motel window at 4 a.m. The cars cruising the sand on Ormond Beach just feet from our towels. We wouldn't get to dance in a swirl of beer spray and tanning oil with college kids from across the eastern seaboard while Eddie Money croons 2 tickets to paradise in a rumpled white linen suit without a shirt on the stage at the Main Street Pier. We weighed the pros and cons of joining her parents on a tropical island. No, we didn't. We said yes immediately and took off for Alexandria within the minute. Okay, so I'd never been on a plane before, and my heart was pounding with fear as we soared over the vast ocean with no place for an emergency landing. And it raced with excitement over this very important step for not mankind, but my kind. The kind of family could only afford borrowed beach trailers or Howard Johnson's vacations. And while Abby's parents settled into first class, clearly their friends' non-refundable tickets seemed to have been downgraded as we made ourselves comfortable in the Eastern Airlines smoking section in the back of the plane. We downed the first of countless rum punches and before long touched down at the Aeropuerto in Puerto Rico. As we descended the stairs onto the tarmac, I breathed in the scent of coconut mixed with jet fuel, a welcome relief from the Carlton 100s that our seatmate puffed continuously for 1,400 of the 1,500 miles between our nation's capital and the gateway to the British Virgin Islands. Next, we boarded Air BVI to Tortola. This plane had just 10 seats, and we had to duck our way down the narrow aisle to get into them. The tiny vessel roared to life like a collection of tin cans being dragged behind a jalopy with a just married sign. And I gripped my armrest as we rose into the cloudless blue sky. When I dared to look out the window, I saw the cerulean sea dotted with reefs and tiny scrub islands speckled with palm trees. We glided over Sir Francis Drake Channel and landed on Beef Island 45 minutes later. It wasn't long before we were crossing the bridge to Tortola, and as we wound down the Bougainvillea Line drive to Prospect Reef Resort, I thought perhaps I was in a dream. When we walked into the room overlooking the lush gardens, I was fairly sure my plane had gone down and I had gone to heaven. I'd never had my own bed on a vacation before. My family of 6 would stay in a single motel room with my parents in one bed, me and my middle sister in the other. We'd have a rollaway brought in for my brother, while my father pushed 2 chairs together and strapped them into place with his belt to create a place for my youngest sister to sleep. Sometimes they'd make my brother and I duck in the back of the Ford Aerostar, so they'd only be charged for a family of 4. And then we'd sneak into the room under the cover of the night, hiding behind Piggly Wiggly bags stuffed full of peanut butter jelly, Wonder Bread, and Daddy's vacation staples, Mountain Dew and Jim Beam. But here on the island, I had found paradise. We ordered a constant stream of pina coladas and coconut shells. We spent our first few days sailing to St. Thomas and Drake's Anchorage and Virgin Gorda with Abby's parents, snorkeling in Loblolly Bay, and dancing at the hotel club where Abby's mom was crowned a limbo champ. It was lovely. But we were 19 and this was spring break. We decided to venture out of bounds because, and you all know this, fun is generally never found within boundaries. Walking along Waterfront Road, we came upon a thatched roof bar with a live reggae band. There we found ourselves surrounded by college students all the way from Iowa and Missouri, and others from Yale and Harvard. A group of Aussies mentioned a medicine man living in the hills overlooking Sea Cows Bay. And after drinking several cruisin' confusions, we decided to check it out with our newfound friends. We piled into Sebastian's rusty orange Chevy Chevette and headed up the rugged dirt road. Sebastian was from Sydney and he lived on Tortola for 6 months. He wore early stage dreadlocks in his dust-colored hair, and he smelled of cigarettes and sun-dried sweat. His accent was enchanting, and I bumped along in the back seat hanging on his every word. Amani, the medicine man's home, was part shack and part treehouse. He sat on a wooden rocking chair under a guava tree, clearly stoned out of his mind, with his crown of wild boa constrictor-sized dreadlocks. He made Sebastian's dreads look like gently wound spaghetti. Abby and I shared glances, trying so hard to play it cool as Sebastian and his friends casually chatted up the mildly deranged drug dealer. Our antennae were up, and we sobered up fast, fake sipping the guava berry wine he offered us as we came to realize just how stupid we were to accompany guys that we didn't even know to a remote home without telling anyone where we'd gone. $15. We spent $15 on a film canister crammed full of weed. Having never personally purchased pot before, we considered our money well spent. Thankfully, with the transaction complete, the Australians were ready to leave. As we rode down the mountain with its spectacular view of the sun setting beyond Nanny Cay, I breathed in a pot-filled sigh of relief. Abby and I spent the last few days on Tortola trying to use up as much of our canister of cannabis as we possibly could while hanging out with our new Aussie friends at the beach in Smuggler's Cove. But try as we may, we didn't make much of a dent in our stash of hash. And as starving college students, we couldn't bear to waste our money. So Abby contrived a plan. As we waited for the taxi to take us to the airport, she hid the container in her father's suitcase, buried amidst his boxer briefs. What were the chances, she reasoned, that anyone would think her jovial, bald, teetotaling father was a drug smuggler? My fear of flying was somewhat abated by my fear that our reckless scheme would be thwarted and her poor dad would be sent to Rikers Island, all for about $10 worth of pot. As we approached the airport, there were police officers with menacing dogs on leashes by the entrance of the tiny terminal. The cab driver piled our bags onto a luggage cart, and Abby's dad smiled and nodded as he casually strolled past security, heading toward the ticket counter. Our hearts were pounding, and surely our eyes were darting behind our cheap sunglasses from dog to officer to gun holster to overhead camera. A determined German shepherd pulled his gun-wielding handler toward Abby's parents. Shit, holy shit, holy shit. The dog sniffed at my suitcase, then Abby's mom's suitcase, then Abby's, before abruptly changing direction. Abby and I locked terrified eyes with relief. Moments after we were all checked in, we watched from the observation deck as our bags were loaded onto the underbelly of the propeller plane. No dogs in sight. When we landed at Dulles that evening, Abby snuck her stash from her father's suitcase while we waited for our cab. The next day, we headed back to Chapel Hill with our souvenir stash. But first, we made a stop in Georgetown for a couple of bottles of Everclear. After all, the drinking age was 18 in that college town, and we were feeling invincible.
Oh gosh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Suzanne Weerts. Oh my goodness. These are great. This is exactly what I'm talking about, everybody. The wild side. No, it wasn't Mexico. No, you were not dragged out in the streets like Lila was. No, but you had your own thing going on. That was really cool. I like, you know what? I don't think there are enough mildly deranged drug dealers in the world. I wish drug dealers could get together and just be mildly deranged. I would appreciate that, because your story was moving very close to Midnight Express in a paradise. So I was hoping, I was like, oh God, her father's going to the slaver, but I'm glad it all turned out. Thank you. That is your walk on the wild side. And I hope you still have that canister. The pot's gone, but you still have the canister. That's the important thing, I hope. All right,
No,
we're going to wrap.
we use that up, Beverly. Come on.
Oh, it's memories. You don't have a scrapbook, you got the canister. Come on. That's the important thing. I meant to say at the beginning, Mr. Julio Martinez had a family emergency, so he could not be here. So we are going to close this show with someone who we've not seen for several months, which has been a great wounding to my heart, because who does not love Mike Lambert? I think you could go far and wide before you could find someone who does not love him. And this is how I describe him. He is like, his storytelling is like the buttercream icing on cake. Now the cake itself, which is his story, is great, and you would just eat the cake without the icing. But it is him. Mike Lambert is the icing on the cake. He is pure deliciousness. Mr. Mike Lambert.
Thank you. Let me see here. Hi, everybody. It's very nice to experience connection with you tonight, albeit virtual. Okay. Dear Mrs. Eddy, letters from a bad Christian Scientist. I don't know if anyone here hasn't heard this meme before, but these are letters to the discoverer and founder of the religion that I tried to grow up in. Okay. She was around in the 19th century in New England. Dear Mrs. Eddy, I write to you during the spring semester of 9th grade at Berkeley Hall School. Over the last year, some disturbing developments have arisen that I need to share with you. In short, I have developed of late an unnatural and very strong attraction to the British pop music sensation Tom Jones. He is fascinating. The thrusting, the gyrating, the sweating, the tight pants. I know that the material body is nothing but a false belief of the material senses. Well, let me just say Tom Jones has one of the biggest false beliefs I have ever seen. And that's not all. I've also acquired a peculiar interest in wrestling magazines. I've amassed a pretty impressive collection, which I of course keep securely under my mattress. I've become quite an enthusiastic fan of world champion wrestling star Bruno Sammartino, and the Gladiator movies on TV on Saturday afternoons. They literally take my breath away. I'm not sure what I'm feeling, but I am sure it is very wrong. You'll be pleased to know that I have been very worried about all of this and have kept all of it top secret from everyone. My hope was that if I just spent more time reading Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, I'd eventually lose interest. And that was working fine until 2 weeks ago. I was standing in front of the mirror in the men's room of the Beverly Hilton Hotel, getting dressed for Mrs. Paul Henreid's cotillion. And my classmate, David Johnson, who I do not like at all, but who Mom says I must be nice to because his father is on Gilligan's Island, says quite casually to me while adjusting his clip-on tie, you know, I've been getting into gay sex. Why don't you come over to my house this Sunday after church and I can show you what it's like? How did he know? And who else knew? And how could they know before I did? David must have seen something in me, something dark and ugly and wrong. And I just thought, well, if this is what I am, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. So I agreed. And the next thing I knew, I was standing in Sunday school listening to the closing words as they rushed over me like cold wind. Your words, Mrs. Eddy. Spirit is God, and man is his image and likeness. Therefore, man is not material, he is spiritual. Sunday school is dismissed. Man is spiritual, not material. Man is spiritual, not material. The words echoed in my head like giant church bells, and now I was in Mrs. Johnson's big Galaxy station wagon, sitting in the back seat next to David Johnson, driving high up into the hills of Studio City to their Spanish mission-style mansion. Mrs. Johnson made us sandwiches and then said, well, you boys have fun. I have a meeting and I'll be back to drive you home, Mike, in a couple of hours. And the front door closed behind her. Man is spiritual, not material. Man is spiritual, not material. And then David started the lesson. I won't go into detail, Mrs. Eddy. I'm sure I've already horrified you enough as it is. But let me just say that it wasn't exciting or exhilarating. No Tom Jones, no Bruno Sammartino. It was cold and clinical and joyless. Some of the things he had me do made me feel like I was going to throw up, but I did them because this is what I am, I thought. Man is spiritual, not material. We finished and I got dressed. I was dizzy and cold. It would still be another hour before Mrs. Johnson got home, so I told David Johnson I would walk home, and I did. I walked all the way down to Ventura Boulevard, then all the way back home, about 3 miles. Along the way, I was passing storefronts and office buildings with shiny windows and metallic siding. I looked at myself as I walked along, and I looked ugly, Mrs. Eddy. Worse than ugly, I looked like David Johnson. I just never knew it, but now I did. There was nothing I could do about it. Man is spiritual, not material. When I got home, all I could think of was, I hope he doesn't tell anyone about it. I hope no one ever finds out, especially my mom. And I spent a good part of the next several years making sure no one ever did. and no one ever did. But it seemed like David Johnson was following me wherever I went. That summer, I went on a study trip to France that Berkeley Hall School had organized, and David Johnson came too. After Berkeley Hall School, I enrolled at Grant High School, the local public school. And even though he lived in a different district and should have gone to North Hollywood High, David Johnson was there too. And after high school, I started at UCLA, which was great because it was huge and I could be anonymous. And in my freshman year, UCLA's first gay student union was founded, and its president was David Johnson. Then I moved to New York, and finally, David Johnson was nowhere to be found. Finally, I was a little bit free. I came out of the closet, pursued a career in theater, fell hopelessly in love 4.5 times that were reciprocal, and countless others that were not, and led a good and happy life. But there was always a part of me in the background, barely noticeable, invisible, that was still on that long, long walk of shame. One day I read in the paper that a leading figure in the gay rights movement in Los Angeles had died of AIDS, and that his name was David Johnson. I hate to say it, Mrs. Eddy, but I was relieved. But in a way, he didn't die. He was still in me. Before I knew it, 50 years had passed. 50 years since that long walk along Ventura Boulevard that sealed my fate. And just last week, Mrs. Eddy, just last week, it occurred to me that maybe David Johnson had occupied too large a space in my world, and it was time to let him go, to start new. So I decided to retrace my steps, to see if that me, that 14-year-old then me, that had taken that long walk of shame 50 years ago, might have something to tell this me of today, this now me. I took the bus down Ventura Boulevard, got off at Tujunga, and went to the very spot where it had all started, and I walked slowly and mindfully. The first thing I noticed was that my body had changed. I was standing differently, taller, with my head higher, and my shoulders looser and falling back and down, maybe from all the yoga I've been doing during the pandemic. Don't even ask, Mrs. Eddy. Some of the mirrored storefronts and office buildings weren't there anymore, but there were plenty of shiny surfaces, and I looked at the boy, at the man who was looking back at me from those shiny surfaces today. And he didn't look like David Johnson at all. He looked strong and kind, with a pretty nice build and a killer smile. And he was me. He must have been there all along, but I'd never seen him. I kept walking, and I listened for any kind of message that that 14-year-old me might have for me. And nothing came, which ends up was perfect, because as it turns out, I was the one with the message, a message for him. And the message, so clear. He had done nothing wrong. Nothing, seriously, nothing. Not with Tom Jones, not with Bruno Sammartino, and not even with David Johnson. Okay, there was that glue sniffing period in 8th grade, but that was out of loneliness more than anything else. I was there to let him off the hook, to set him free. I was never David Johnson, and neither was he. Hell, even David Johnson was never David Johnson. It made me think of that hymn we used to sing in school. I walk with love along the way, and oh, it is a holy day. No more I suffer cruel fear. I feel God's presence with me here. The joy that none can take away is mine. I walk with love today. You were right all along, Mrs. Eddy. Well, you were half right. Man is spiritual and also material. And the material is the most spiritual part of all. Sunday school is dismissed.
Mr. Mike Lambert. Oh gosh. As always, you give us a mighty healing. Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Thank you. Gosh. That is our show for this evening. Please, those who are listening and watching, let this all wash over you, and see what wild story you have, because you know you got them, because we had a variety of things tonight. We had an innocent trip to Mexico in strange beds with peculiar men. We had a harrowing day in court with a celebrity judge. We had predatory possums. We had the alcohol, liquor, drugs, and somebody's parents. And we had sweaty British singing with gyrating. We had it all. That I thank you all. I thank you everyone so much. Thank you, Lila Silvern. Thank you, Miyo Yamauchi. Thank you, Vicki Juditz. Thank you, Suzanne Weerts. Thank you, Mike Lambert. Thank you so much, everybody. Wonderful night. Thank you for your boldness and your courage and your wonderfulness. Thank you, Amber Greenberg. And I will be continuing to put out videos telling you if we can get together on the 8th, September the 8th. Again, I hope that happens, but if not, I got a good, strong feeling in my heart that it will be sometime soon. So this shall happen, and we can get together face to face, and tell our own wild and ordinary stories together. So watch us. We'll be back here next month for another virtual show, and blessings to you all. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, everybody. Be wild, everybody. W-I-L-D. Thank you.
Thanks, Beverly.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Mr.
Love you guys. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a
so
good
long.
night.